seem like a quite young. What's your interest in Canned Heat?
Oh, I'm just a fan. I'm just a fan. I'm 30. Don't I'm not that
Oh,
young.
that's good. That's good. It's good to have young fans. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm sure you've got a lot. You've got a lot of young fans. So I wanted to take things back to the beginning. This is the Greatest Music of All Time podcast, and I wanted to start by asking you what got you into music in the first place, and what were your earlier influences?
Well, the main influence in music was my father. I grew up in Mexico City, and my father used to like American culture a lot, and he used to like American music. So when I was a kid, since I was about 10 years old or so, he will always take me to watch all these movies about jazz artists, the old movies about swing, the swing era, the Glenn Miller story, the Benny Goodman story, the Gene Krupa story, all those great jazz and swing musicians that made black and white movies. And my dad used to drag me there all the time and, take me to the movies and turn me on to that. And then again, he was always into music. He would buy me instruments here and there. He never really wanted me to be a professional musician. He just wanted me to take music as a hobby, which is what most parents want. He will say, well, take music as a hobby so you don't end up joining a gang or doing something a lot worse. And so that's my first influence, my dad, taking me to watch all those movies. And then eventually when Bill Haley and the Comets came to Mexico City, in the very beginning of rock and roll, he also took me to watch Bill Haley and the Comets. So my dad was a very hip guy. He was an old guy, but he loved rock and roll, and he loved swing music and jazz, and that's what got me into music.
And when did you first start playing drums?
Well, as I said again, my dad was buying records. He bought me my first record was this yellow record from Specialty. Here is Little Richard. He bought me this record for my birthday. So I just out of my mind decided to set up my own drum kit. So I made me a drum kit out of cookie tins and cardboard boxes and an old army marching snare drum. And that's basically how I set up my first drum kit. I was also using one of those old-fashioned, very Art Deco metal ashtrays that they used to have with strange colors, red and greens and bright yellows. So the metal ashtray was a perfect symbol. So that was my first drum kit, that I just assembled myself. No, I never took music lessons or any of that. Everything I learned was by looking at other musicians and listening to records.
Wow, that's amazing. So did you learn completely to play by ear and playing along?
Yeah, I'm pretty much a street musician, and in many ways most blues musicians are that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not everybody needs to learn in the sort of like formal or classical way, particularly when it comes to pop and rock and roll and blues music, and that's what kind of makes
it is nice. Yeah. It is nice to have an education, but it is not essential.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you've got an education. You've got the education of loving music and playing it from the heart and from the soul, which I think is, very, very important. So how did things progress from that stage of early, learning your craft and getting into music and getting into pop culture like that to Canned Heat? What was the journey there?
Okay, well, the journey, as I said, it started in Mexico City. And as I told you earlier, my father didn't want me to be a professional musician. So I continued in school, and I finished high school, and then I went to go ahead to get my bachelor's degree, which is what my father wanted. He wanted me to have an education. And I just did it for him, basically, because I was totally into music by then. By the time I was getting my bachelor's, I was already about 16, 15 years old, around that. But I started playing when I was 13. That's basically when I got my first real drum kit, and I had my first record contract. I had a little band, a little garage band that we started, all the kids. And we ended up getting a record contract with RCA Victor and then with Columbia, with CBS. I was not even 15 years old and I already had record contracts and I was making records. But I had to go to school. So what happens is that this is really funny, and I talk about it in my book, by the way. We'll talk about the book later. I used to go to sleep sometimes in classroom because I had to play at night in the nightclubs and cafes and stuff. And it got to the point where my teachers already knew what I was doing with my music. They started respecting it and respecting me, and they wouldn't even wake me up if I went to sleep on classroom. Any other kid will go to sleep in classroom, he will get a eraser in his head right there. You know, the teachers will just throw the eraser. But me, they will let me do it because they knew I was working at night. So all of a sudden, all this cooperation and understanding from my own teachers, from my teachers while I was getting my BA in humanities, you know, they were very sensitive people. They were philosophy teachers, ethics, logics. That's what I was learning, sociology, psychology, you know. So they were people that were very sensitive and they saw this talent or whatever that I had. And they were the ones that really told me, you should be a professional. They were very happy to give me my bachelor's degree, but they advised me not to go in university. They told me straight ahead, they said, you are a much better musician than you are going to be a student. They said, we're going to pass you, give you your bachelor's degree. Now you can go and be an artist. You know, satisfy your father with your title, with your degree, and go and play music. And I'll always remember that because in those times in my life, I was young and I didn't know really which way to go, but it was the sensitiveness of my teachers, my actual teachers that told me, you know, you are a musician, you go ahead and do that. And that's how I started playing professionally. I worked in Mexico City and played with some of the most famous rock and roll bands there from 13 years old to around 18. That's when I met this wonderful American girl. I fell in love, I married her, and then I moved to the US. I had discovered rhythm and blues music already a few years before I moved to the US. I had an education already, and that helped me a lot when I came to the US and I, you know, applied to join Canned Heat. I already knew blues music well and rhythm and blues music. And also I had more experience on the stage than any of the other guys, except for Larry Taylor. So that's how the whole thing started.
And what year was that?
1967. I
Wow.
came into the band. I came to the United States in the beginning or late 66, early 67, and I joined Canned Heat around October of 67. My first gig with Canned Heat was with the Doors at the Long Beach Auditorium on December 1st, 1967.
And you know, what when you joined the band, you know, Canned Heat were literally just coming up, weren't they? They hadn't really found their feet properly yet, but they played one major gig at Monterey. Is that right?
Yes, yes, and they had one record already, one LP, which is the first LP, the yellow one. Canned Heat started earlier, like in late 65, by Bob Hyde and Alan Wilson. They started the concept of making a band called Canned Heat, but they were making a jug band. That's what they were doing. You know what a jug band is? You know, the old-fashioned with a big jug and the acoustic percussion instruments and all that, like in the old South, right? That was their idea because Alan and Bob were really musicologists and record collectors. They were not performers, okay? They just loved music with a lot of deepness, and they had extensive record collections. I mean, Bob Hyde's collection was amazing, a complete room full of 78s. And he had a few LPs too, but the 78s was his main thing. So these guys started the concept of making the band. And then it developed into a blues band. They hired different musicians, but none of them really lasted too long. I'm not used to even mention them. Some of them became famous later. But basically, the band was formed and made the first record in 1966. And then with Henry Vestine was the third person that came in, the guitar player. He was also a musicologist and record collector, but also a great guitar player. Then in the beginning of 1966, Larry Taylor came in. And then at the end of 1966, I came in, and that basically formed what is known as the classic lineup.
Yeah. And there were some pretty exciting times then. Did you guys do perform a kind of residency in LA in Sunset Boulevard? What was the story?
You know about the house. That was Elvis Presley house. We used to, our managers and Bob Hyde rented this beautiful house behind the Whiskey A Go-Go in Sunset Boulevard. And there used to be Elvis. Elvis used to live there. So it was a real nice house. And it was a constant party going on there. It was great. John Mayall talks about it and sings about it in his book too, in his records, about he hanging with the Canned Heat, and the Bear, and it was a lot of fun. And we used to, the Bear used to have moved his whole record collection to the famous Elvis house, and it was a party going on 24 hours a day. That was what the Canned Heat thing was about. Bob Hyde playing records for friends, for people, constantly educating and turning people into the blues. That was our mission in life, to turn white people into the blues. And I think we did a pretty good job at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the first record that you were involved with Canned Heat was Boogie with Canned Heat, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And
that was
that your first? Well, wouldn't it have been your first time in a recording studio, because you had all those record deals when you were younger, and you were doing you were already quite experienced. But how was it adjusting to working with Canned Heat?
As I said earlier, I had more experience than any of them, with the exception of Larry. Maybe I already had 4 or 5 LPs recorded. And I already have had gold records, and I enjoyed a lot of fame and fortune in Mexico. I was very lucky from the very beginning. The session of Boogie with Canned Heat was a wonderful session, a wonderful experience. We were like a family. In the studio, there was no stress at all. We had friends, we had our wives, we had groupies, we had fans, all sitting around us in the recording studio in Liberty Studios in Sunset Boulevard. And we had some joints, we had food, munchies, and it was like playing a party, like playing a private show, a private party, and that's how we recorded the Boogie with Canned Heat record. And you can hear it there. Sometimes you hear Bob screaming in the background, yeah, things like that. It was so much fun. It had this freshness about the band, a new brotherhood coming in together, a new band. It was a new band because I had just joined in, and Larry had just joined in, and also our approach was basically to just play the songs, but not overplay them, not hammer it around on and on and on and on like many bands do. And then after they do 50 takes, they discover that the first take was the best one. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we were more into just performing and doing the things as fresh as possible. Because if you repeat yourself too much in the studio and you try to get the best ever, you lose sensitivity. You see, you lose the sensitivity that accompanies music. That's why, for example, John Lee Hooker will never agree to do more than 2 takes. No way. If you don't get it by the second take, you didn't get it. So that's basically the approach we had on Canned Heat recordings in general. And as I told you, the Boogie with Canned Heat was a wonderful experience, recording it as a family. as a party. And then all of a sudden, we get our first hit record with On the Road Again, something we never expected and we never really were made for. We were not a pop band. You know, we never really care about being famous. It just happened. We wanted to educate. That's what we wanted. We didn't care about the fame and all that, you know, silly stuff. But
And
it came in and it was nice.
yeah, for sure. Was it the same type of experience when you recorded Living the Blues?
Pretty much the same. But then already we were more professional, we were older, and we already had been touched by some of the madness and the ugliness of the music business. We had already pressures from management. You guys had a hit record. You have to have another hit record now. Otherwise, people will forget you and you'll be nothing. I mean, that's how they talk to us. And we're kids, you know what I mean? We're 20-year-old kids trying to figure out what happened here. All of a sudden, we're very famous. We're making good money. You know, there is all this stuff going on. But then it's Living the Blues. We have to do, we have to have another hit record. Fortunately, in one of the rehearsals, Alan shows up and says, I have this idea from this old country blues song called Bulldoze Blues from Henry Thomas, a one-man band. And I said, well, you know, play it. And then he goes with a flute part, you know. And then he starts playing Jaga 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 and says, going up the country, baby, don't you want to go? And it was just the three of us, Larry Taylor, Alan, and me. And all of a sudden, we start just playing the thing with as simple as possible, an 8-note beat, you know. And halfway through the song, we just look at each other and we smile and said, this is going to be a hit record. We just knew it the moment before we even finished the first take, the first song, you know, the first rehearsal. It was amazing how Alan came out with this very simple, very primal thing, you know, and it became a huge record worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, how is your relationship with that song? You know, do you treasure it? Do you get sick of it? I mean, it's like one of those songs that's on the radio all the time. It's in so many movies. It's such a it's an amazing like pop culture song. I always hear it in like Martin Scorsese movies. Maybe he uses it like as often as like Gimme Shelter. It's just like one of those, yes. And it just, for those of us, you know, who weren't around during that time but are huge, you know, I'm a huge fan of the 60s, or I love the idea of the 60s and the 70s and that kind of golden era of rock and pop music that I always find myself lost in the old stuff and kind of thinking, why the hell can't it be like that now? Be much better if
I think like that sometimes too. But you know, there is some hope. There are some young guys like you out there playing in garages and learning music just like we did. Not all of you are technos. That's very nice, because we don't want everybody to be a techno. We want some of you to learn your instrument properly and learn how to play a guitar, a saxophone, a piano, not just a computer. You see, and there is some hope there, because I've talked to other young people like yourself, and some of them are approaching music the way we did, as a craft. It is a craft. It is a physical thing. It cannot be just a computer thing, because it is more physical than that, and it is more human than that, you see. So, of course, music is not the same as it used to be, and it's not made the way we used to make it, but there are always some people there that are still pure, and young ones like you and younger. There is, no matter where you are, there is always some garage band there somewhere in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
you know, and that gives me great hope. Gives me great hope. Wherever you walk around and you hear some old, you know, out of an old funky garage, some kids there making all kinds of noise and all that, that is wonderful. That is a blessing.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And it's definitely, I feel like it's essential that music continues to be made by human beings, you know, using physical instrumentation, not using laptops. I mean, what do you make of the prediction that because some people have been getting quite excited that I've been listening to in interviews. They're saying, oh, we can even replace songwriters, human songwriters, with artificial intelligence. We can replace all guitar solos with a click of a button with artificial intelligence. Can we? And would we want to?
Yeah, but they'll do it too. They'll be doing that because wherever there is money to be made, people will do whatever is necessary, you know. And I'm sure there are people that are going to figure, well, A1, you know, AI, I call it A1, AI will give us that. I mean, you know, I'm not going to be around when that happens. And I'm glad I'm not going to be around when that happens, because I think that's going to be terrible. But it's, again, we have to put emphasis on the humanity of music. We cannot abandon that, even if AI comes up with something wonderful. It doesn't matter. There'll never be another Beethoven or another Mozart. Come on, you know, I don't think a computer can do that.
Yeah, I hope not. And also, why would anybody want to be a fan of AI? I struggle to see that. It's not like you'd be
I don't know why
the band computer. My favorite band,
I know.
Packard.
Why does anybody want to be a fan of Trump? I mean, come on, it's something we can not understand. You know, it's the same way. You know?
Yes, yeah, that's very true. So, what I wanted to know was, after that single, after the enormous success of going out the country, were there kind of pressures that went along with it?
Well, the beginning of the 70s, we were doing really good. 1969, we played at Woodstock, of course. And, you know, we were headlining the second day at Woodstock. And we were in those times, towards the end of 69, we were probably America's #1 band at the time, you know. You know, that's debatable. There is no such thing as #1 or such thing as the best. But we were one of the most known and most well accepted and well regarded groups. And so, as I said, 69 went on and it was fantastic. We had that big hit going up the country. We played Woodstock. The band was doing great. But that's when we suffered our first setback, which was the big fight between Larry Taylor and Henry Vestine, when he quit the band 2 days before Woodstock. Actually, a few days before Woodstock. And then we hired Harvey Mandel, which was an excellent guitar player, but it was not the original classic Canned Heat family that we had, you know, that thing. So that was already the first blow into our history, you know, and the first sad thing that happened. And then, of course, shortly after, Alan Wilson died. And that made already the whole situation of the 70s a lot more grim and a lot more sad and a lot harder for us. So I guess we went up to our top from 67 to 70. We still had the luck to have another hit record, this time with Bob Hyde singing, "Let's Work Together." Okay, so that was done in 1970, and that was huge in England, by the way. It was actually bigger in England and in Europe than it was in America. "Let's Work Together" is still one of our famous songs.
Yeah.
That they use a lot in the movies, and you know, you watch, and they're still using it in commercials and the movies and all that. So that was the 70s for us. And as I said, we also did the Hooker and Heat record in 1969. So all this stuff happened at the same time. We have "Let's Work Together," a hit record. We have the Hooker and Heat, which is very well accepted and regarded. It's also a hit record.
Oh, yeah.
And then Alan Wilson dies.
I mean, in a way,
You know,
so much happened between, you know, in like less than 5 years, in like 4 years or something. An unbelievable amount.
Yeah, it was so, you know, we went up to our cuspid, you know, the top of the hill, and then all of a sudden is the long slide. And as I call it in my book, I mean, I wish you had read my book. I don't know if you have, but
I only found out about it very recently when we were arranging this interview. But I'm going to order a copy. I'd love to read it. Yeah.
You should.
Once
try to buy it from my website, or buy it as an ebook. Because if you go to Amazon and try to buy it, they'll try to charge you, $100 for a used copy and stuff like that. One of the things
I'll advertise it on this podcast as well, as in on the link.
Please do. It's entitled "Living the Blues," and the website is cannedheatmusic.com. Okay, and now I'm charging $50 for a copy of the book. I sign it, and I include a double CD, Boogie House Tapes #2, which is one of my favorites. I'm doing this because, as I said, Amazon.com is selling my books for more than $60 used, up to $900. I don't know who the hell is trying to charge $900 for my book, but some nut is doing that. And a lot of people go and buy it in Amazon. And I was saying, hey, buy it from me, buy it from the website, not from Amazon. You want to make Jeff Bezos richer?
Absolutely not. I hate Jeff Bezos.
So anyway, I want to tell you more about the book. I just signed a couple of years ago. I signed a deal to make a movie out of the book with Mike Judge.
Wow.
Do you know who Mike?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think I do. The name sounds familiar.
Beavis and Butthead. Beavis and Butthead.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Okay, he has another series called Tales from the Tour Bus. You should look for that in Showtime or in YouTube. It talks about all these bands and the history of bands and all that, and those are animated. It's really, really nice.
I think he was in Office Space as well.
Yes. He directed and produced Office Space, and he's also directing Silicon Valley, the other series, Silicon Valley from HBO.
That's amazing.
And he also did King of the Hill.
So he's huge.
Probably know. Oh yeah, he's huge. He's huge. But the main thing about Mike is that he knows music. He used to be a musician. He was a bass player, and he's the perfect person to do my book because he's got that dark sense of humor, which is what my book is about. It's a tragedy, but it's also funny. You see. And Mike Judge, he's the one that called me. I couldn't believe it when I'm sitting here in my house, and all of a sudden I get this call and says, "This is Mike Judge." And my God, I really admire you. I mean, he did another movie called Idiocracy, which is fantastic. I highly recommend it. Watch it one of these days. Idiocracy by Mike Judge. He tells me, "I am Mike Judge." And I go, "Boy, man, this is great hearing from a big-time producer in Hollywood, And he tells me, "I love your book and I want to make a movie out of it." And he came to see me that same day. He actually came all the way to my town. I live away from out of LA, and came to my town. We spent a couple of hours together. We were laughing. I was showing him my scrapbooks, etc. And we made a deal. Unfortunately, it's been 2 years since we made the deal, and still I haven't heard from him. But he sends me money now and then to keep the option open, but he hasn't done the movie yet. But you see, that's how Hollywood works. It takes forever. All I want is to finish the movie before I die. I told him that.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's the story.
I really hope
the book is entitled. Yeah, the book is entitled "Living the Blues."
Living the Blues. I really hope it gets made. I mean, some of the things that happened to you guys are insane. Headlining Woodstock, and just then the tragedy that followed, and then what was it like after that? It sounds like it was pretty chaotic after that in the mid-70s.
Well, as I'm telling you, the beginning of 1970, 1971, we're still doing very good until Alan died. Okay, when Alan died, of course, we still have a hit record with Bob Hyde singing, and we still have a very famous band and a good unit. But Alan was a real strong creative force. It's not that he was the band. He was not the band. The band was a compilation of all of us, right? But he had he was just a very talented person, and he went too young. He was 27 years old. That famous 27 number, just like Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison and Hendrix and Kurt Cobain. All these people have died at 27. There is a book called 27 that talks about all these deaths. So you already passed that number, so you are going to be okay, all right?
Thank God.
You're 30, all right? You're 30?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So anyway, you're asking about the 70s, and this is very interesting. We're still, after all this happened, let's say 1972, 73, all of a sudden disco music comes on. That was definitely the beginning of the downfall. Disco music comes on, and most clubs decided not to hire live music anymore. And they were using only a disc jockey and disco, The whole thing changed. The whole appreciation for quality and good music and blues and jazz-oriented music, all this music that came out of Woodstock and Monterey and all that was gone. And now people just decided to do a lot of cocaine and lose themselves in these clubs with all these generic beats that were all the same. And it just changed. It lost its innocence too. During the times of the weed and the mushrooms and the LSD, there was a certain innocence on it in the 60s. The mid-70s lost their innocence. The hard drugs came in. You must know about the famous Altamont concert of the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, of course.
Where all this violence happened, there was heroin, there was cocaine, there was all these dead drugs. And as I said, that was more or less the mark where the innocence of the 60s was lost and the decadence started to be apparent on our lives. Since then, it has been a struggle to be in Canned Heat. It's been an uphill battle for the last 40 years.
Really?
We kept it going. And I kept it going because I always saw something very valid in being in a band like Canned Heat. It was worth it. It was worth to dedicate my life to it. I think we did pretty good after all, and all the tragedies and everything that happened, even after Alan's death.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and at the same time, every single band, and every single artist, they have a heyday, in the sense of they have that golden 4 or 5 year period where they're unstoppable, where they're like the biggest thing in the world. But it's far more difficult to do what Canned Heat have done, which is to start in the late 60s, to be here in 2020 and be a very famous band, and to have your records played in the millions all the time,
Yeah, it is amazing. And not only that, but let's say 2019 was our best year ever.
Wow.
Because we had the celebration of the 50th anniversary of Woodstock. We went to Australia, we went to Mexico, we came to Europe. We played all over America. We made more money than we've ever made, even when we were famous in 2019. It is amazing. That's another thing about the blues and blues music. The blues musician, the older it gets, the more interesting it is. The pop musician, the older it gets, the less interesting it is, because the pop musician is selling looks. You know what I mean? He's selling these looks and his youth. The blues musician is only sell music.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing to sell music than to sell your looks. Remember, you're talking about the 70s, and I'm talking about the beginning of the decadence with disco music. But that's nothing. Then MTV came in, and that changed the whole music scene. It became like a more like a visual thing and less an audio thing. and then MTV, and now and after that the technology and the techno and all that, and now you see where music is at now. It has branched into like a tree in many different branches, but still that main tree and that trunk, those roots are the blues.
Yeah, for sure. With a large part of pop music, you know, is based on the blues. So I guess
A lot of it.
there's going to be that always that appetite to see the kind of the real deal, the organic music being made. So it's not surprising that last year was your biggest year ever. I mean, are you missing playing live a lot, obviously, with the virus? Like, are you hoping to get back on the road, like when the vaccines come in and all that?
I was telling you about 2019 being our greatest year because of all these gigs we did. You know, it was amazing. To be honest, I was getting pretty exhausted and pretty tired already at the end of 2019. I was already having a few arguments with my manager about working less. I am exhausted, not of playing. We love playing the music and we love the communion with the people, but the traveling is just awful. And air travel has become worse and worse and worse. Now, of course, the airliners are suffering and they are becoming nicer now, but they were never nice. And for us, it's been a real sacrifice, especially for me, to travel the amount of miles that we have traveled just to deliver a show. And that's why whenever I talk about it and we say the music is for free, what we charge for is to get there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
We enjoy playing the music. We enjoy playing the music. The music, I'm not charging for playing the music. Hell, I love playing, but I hate traveling. And I hate the inconvenience of leaving your home, living your life, your whatever you are used to. You are always a slave of the circumstances when you are traveling. You know, many things can happen. It's very, very hard to be on the road. And I've been on the road with a Canned Heat for 53 years. So as I said, at the end of 2019, I was already getting pretty tired. So in a way, this virus came in and it slows us down. That's okay. I wanted to slow down. I wanted to stop traveling so much, but not like that. I still want to play music. So let's hope that for next year, we'll be able to do a few gigs again.
Yeah, fingers crossed. In terms of when you play live, like what songs do you like playing the most? Do you prefer, do you have an appreciation, a deeper appreciation for the kind of classic era stuff and the hits? Do you love doing that? Or are there things from kind of like later on in your catalog that you really like the album Reheated, like end of the 80s? That was, I think that's a really good, like latter day, like Canned Heat album.
You know that album was made with one microphone?
Oh, really?
Yeah. We decided to do it with one microphone in the center of the studio, just like they did the records in the 50s.
That's really
right next to the upright. That's where you get that sound, that fat, old sound, you see? You record with one mic and you record directly into the master. No bullshit mixing or any of that. No. That's what it's all about music, you know, it's the magic of music. When you hear that record, listen to it, you'll hear that it's all in one room, one microphone. Two of the songs were multi-tracks. Mercury Blues is multi-track, and I think the Tom Waits song is also multi-track. But all the other ones, the ones with Larry playing the upright bass and Junior Watson on the lead and all that, those are all done with one microphone.
That's really cool. Why did you decide to do that? It would have been at the height of all the decadence of the 80s. Was it like a reaction to that?
Exactly. We wanted to go totally against the grain. And we, you know, we love the sound of all those old 78s that we collect. And to replicate that kind of sound, you need to record that way. And to record that way, you need to know how to play. You cannot just go and, you know, try to record that way if you're not a player. So that's the way it works. And we've done a lot of experimenting and all that. And you were saying how our live shows are. So we always play our three hits. And no, we are not tired of doing it yet. Why? Because it is blues music. And we always improvise into the song.
Yeah.
See, when you are playing blues music, there is always room to do something different one time from the other. We don't play them exactly the same anytime. That's part of the magic of jazz music and blues music, that you can improvise. You can put some of your own little thing in every song. You know, it's very important because the other kinds, many other kinds of music are very stiff and very regulated, and they have to be the same all the time. Like classical music, which I think is wonderful, but it is regulated, you know, it's stiff, it is arranged. The blues is almost against that. It's just whatever comes out of you, you put there. So we do the three hits, and we, you know, I mean, sometimes, you know, it gets maybe a little boring, but as I said, every time we put a new idea into the song, it works out. Plus, the communion with the people is important. I tell you, sometimes when we're going up the country and we go to this part, no use to you running, screaming and crying, because you have a home, man, as long as I got mine. And that's beautiful. That's telling everybody, my home is yours. Su casa, mi casa es su casa. Sometimes we're playing that song and tears come down my eyes when we do that part. The way I'm relating to the people, you know? So no, we don't get tired of playing our hits as long as they touch the people, you see, because we get touched by them too. And besides playing the hit records, we do a lot of other stuff. Remember, our mission is not just to come and play hit records like a jukebox. We have to educate too. First, we play the hit records, we get their attention. Oh, hey, this is the Canned Heat. This is the guy that plays, these are the bands that play this song. Oh, yeah. Now listen to this. Now learn a little bit about the blues. You see, we give you going up the country and let's work together. And then we give you, let's say, an Elmore James song, a Johnny Guitar Watson song. And then, you know, so we are educating, and at the same time, we're having fun and playing the hit records.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And day to day, you know, when you're not working, when you're not playing gigs, you know, do you still listen to a lot of blues music? Are you still like music?
I've been actually I've been filing all my 78s and 45s. Actually, I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you a little trick to my studio, my music room. You can see it here.
Yeah, yeah.
You see, for example, let me get some light. And because actually now I've been filing all my 78. You see all this? You see this? This beautiful records. You see that? Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
See, even the labels are fantastic. So look at all this. Look at all my collection of 78s. I'm filing them all up. You see? And of course, there is all my gold records and all that. You see that?
Yeah, amazing.
I'm taking you for a trip in my music room, okay? These are all my records. And there is my Woodstock original backstage pass and my gold records. You see it?
Wow, yeah, yeah.
That's my backstage pass. Even the backstage pass is funky. If you see it, you know. You see, the backstage passes they make now are all made of plastic and all complicated and fancy and all that. This is my collection of backstage passes and shows that I've made.
Oh wow!
And as you see, look at that.
That's so cool.
These are all some of the backstage passes that I kept. You know, it's a whole collection. I hope we put it in some museum someday, sometime.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. Well, how many shows do you think you've done with Canned Heat?
Oh my God, don't ask me that. You know, I don't know, 100 a year maybe.
So thousands of shows.
Thousands. And also in Mexico, remember, before I had already 8 years of experience. So
Yeah.
anyway, you were asking me what I do. Yes, of course, I've been listening to records, man. You know, there's all my LPs too. I'm getting ready to file all my LPs. Look. And I have a lot of CDs. I have a lot of CDs too. But of course, when you listen to music on a 78 or on an LP, and then you listen to it on a CD or on an MP3, there's a lot of difference.
Yeah. So do you tend to listen more, more to vinyl than you do to, would you?
Absolutely. Not only that, I try not to listen ever, not ever on the fucking phone. I'm sorry. I just, when people come to me and play music on the phone, it sounds so bad, so compressed. People have forgotten how to listen to music. When you compress music and put it in a little chip and put 1,000 songs in a chip, it's not going to sound the same. It's not going to be the same as having a big, fat, old record going 78 times per minute. You know what I mean? Thick. There is something about it. I mean, only when you play those records, you can tell the difference. If you don't, I guess you can grow up listening to music like that, but it's like walking with one leg. I mean, I'm telling you, when people come to me and play music, a lot of people I know, oh, listen to this. And they come to the phone. I said, no. First of all, let's plug it in somewhere so it sounds like music. You lose the bass. The highs are obnoxious. All this digital stuff, is going on. In movies, it's wonderful. Digital movies, you can watch them. It's beautiful. In music, analog all the way, if you want the richness of what is called dynamic range.
Yeah.
You see, there is no dynamic range in these things. You see, they sound okay if that's all you know. But if you ever hear Elvis Presley 78 on my system, you'll never want to hear anything else. That's the way it happens. And that's why LPs now are getting so popular.
Yeah, among people who really care a lot about music. But part of the problem is people don't have an attention span these days with regards to their.
Yeah, but some of it. You mentioned the young people playing in garage bands, playing rock and roll with guitars and pianos and all that. Is the same thing. Some people are buying LPs again and buying turntables because they know they can hear it.
Yeah,
you can hear it.
Yeah, so it's really,
your body don't lie. Your body don't lie.
Yeah, I guess it's really about just keeping that community that still exists of people who love music in that kind of deep way alive. So, I mean, looking at Canned Heats, like all of the work that you've done, are there some kind of deep cuts or like lesser known tracks, like a couple of ones that you particularly treasure from your kind of recording career?
I like everything we've done. Most of the stuff that has come out, it will not come out if we didn't like it. Okay, yeah. We never release something just for the hell of releasing it. So I cannot really tell you what's my favorite. Some days one song is my favorite. A couple of weeks later, another song is my favorite. And then I have to tell you also, I am not listening to Canned Heat music all the time. Yeah. That's not something I listen to all the time. Sometimes I listen to something and I flash back and I say, my God, I haven't heard this in 10 years or 15 years, I've forgotten how good it sounded. So yeah, I don't listen to Canned Heat that much.
Yeah, that's
I do have fun with it sometimes. When it has to be shared. And right now we're dealing with this virus thing. It's very hard to have companions and people here. I live alone with my 3 cats. I got divorced many years ago and I never got married again. And it is hard right now, but because one of the main things is to share.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
one of the things about music, it's wonderful to hear music by yourself, but it is a lot more wonderful when you're sharing it. And that's why Bob Hyde used to love this marijuana music parties that he used to do all the time. It was like a permanent thing. At the Bears house, you go there, you're going to hear some music, you're going to smoke some weed, you're going to have a good time. It is a thing that is infectious. It has to be with other people. Of course, you can enjoy music by yourself, but it's better when you share it.
Yeah, for sure. I agree completely. And I hope live music comes back as soon as possible. I had a guest on the podcast recently who was excitedly telling me that we might not need live music one day. We might be able to just pump the music straight into our brains. It made me very depressed. So I hope he's wrong.
That's not it. That's not it. You see that all these ultra modern concepts are not right. They're just not right. And there always will be people that will believe about music the way we do. I know. It has to be, because it's almost like truth, facts and lies. It is a fact that music is important and that there is more to it than what you hear. There is a history behind. There is all this humanity too.
Yeah, and it needs to be respected and treasured. Well, Adolfo, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Thanks for your interest in music, and keep the faith, and maybe we'll talk some other time.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you back on the show once I've read your book. I'd love that.
Do that, especially when you read the book or when the movie comes out.
I can't. The movie will be awesome. Thanks so much, Fito. Bye. Speak soon.
Take care, brother.